Welcome to another segment of Do Hard Things. We have an excellent segment today to share with you folks. We have Thoughtworks joining us today, as well as another partner, Rocks Online. And we're going to dive into some very interesting topics that are meaningful to not only Thoughtworks and Rocks and AWS, but to all of us. And we'll find out how things such as inclusion and diversity, sustainability, social change ultimately influence the actions of a business and what that means to the customers that they are reaching out to for the kind of exciting solutions that they can design and build for them. So what I want to do real quickly is throw it over to Mike Dowling, and what we'll do is we'll go around the horn, and if you folks could be so kind as to introduce yourselves and mention what you do for the business, and then we'll jump back into Dr. Baker here and put some more context in terms of the great relationship that you folks have had together for many years now. So without
Chip,
further ado, Mike.
Yeah, Chip, really, I do appreciate you being able to put this together. One of the hallmarks of Do Hard Things in this particular podcast is having conversations with a lot of the faces behind the logos of the companies that we work with. And the cloud business that we're engaged in is really paving the way to change the way that companies do business, companies leverage technology, and how it allows us to adapt to things that are important to our business and allow us to do other things rather than just managing our infrastructures. What can we do with the time we save leveraging cloud technologies to really affect the impact of our organizations in the greater community and, in fact, in the social community? And what we have today assembled a group of folks with Thoughtworks and previous Thoughtworks employees that I think can help us have that discussion. And I'm really excited to spend some time talking with Elise Zelichowski, and I'm hopeful that I pronounced that name correctly, Elise. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, wonderful. Elise is the Global Head of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Sustainability, and Social Change with Thoughtworks, who happens to be a AWS partner in our cloud business. And she's here today with Chad Wathington, who is the Chief Strategic Officer with Thoughtworks, and a prior Thoughtworks employee, Dr. Biko Baker, who is a PhD and founder of Rocks Online. And I think that between the five of us today, we can have a lively discussion around what it takes to dig into diversity and inclusion. I'm very interested to hear Elise's role, what she's actually doing with that particular role that she has, and how sustainable is it, and what can we do to improve the sustainability of these really important motions that we have, and how it will impact maybe some very key aspects of social change. I'd like to also maybe spend some time around what the industry responsibility is to helping make this happen and how it spans across a lot of different organizations, a lot of different communities, because it's not all about IT. It's what the IT and the leveraging of some of these tools allows us to do that go far beyond what it is that we can put together in front of a 32-inch monitor, and with all of the tools that we have to actually allow these companies to do business. What can we do beyond that to do some of the really important changes that we need to be focused on to affect our social communities as well? So let me just start handing it off to maybe the team. And I guess, Elise, what we should do is start off with your role how long you've been doing it, and what your real goal is in this role.
Thanks, Mike. So nice to be here and chatting with you. So I've been at ThoughtWorks, let's see, close to 7 years now, but just recently in this new role as the head of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Sustainability, and Social Change. This is a new global office for ThoughtWorks, but it doesn't mean we've just started working on these issues, right? For close to 3 decades, we have been looking at how diversity, equity, and inclusion, sustainability, and social change can be integrated into our business. What's really unique about our business is that we have a very diverse geographic footprint. Currently, we have offices, let's see, in 17 countries, maybe about 46 cities. Chad can correct me if I'm wrong.
It's up to 50 something now.
Oh my goodness, growing fast. So, you know, we have always really believed in the importance of and the power of strategies that were responsive to regional contexts. So really giving our offices and the regions that they're in a certain amount of autonomy, right, to sort of respond to the diversity issues and the social change and social justice issues that were really relevant in those particular cultural contexts. And as we've grown to now a company of almost 9,000 technologists in 17 countries, we've started to realize that there are extremely important ways in which we can be collaborating more strategically to drive more integration of some of this work into our core business, and sort of things that we can align around, right, to sort of make our business even better. So while we do that global strategic alignment, we're still supporting our regions to respond to those contextual nuances that I think are really what makes us a super unique company. And so I'll just quickly start with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then I'd love to turn it over to Chad, who has a much better historical context since he's been at ThoughtWorks longer than I have. But I'll just say, you know, with our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, we've come together as a company around a priority goal, and that is 40% of our technologists being women and underrepresented gender minorities. And so we've just recently done the work to really align what a technologist is for ThoughtWorks with Anita Borg, which is, I would say, one of the organizations in our industry that set some of the standards, right, and is a very important partner in looking at how to get women and underrepresented gender minorities into our community of practitioners. So we've been really working hard to align there, and are excited that we are very close to 40% of our technologists being women and underrepresented gender minorities. So we are getting there, and we are striving for more. In addition to having one global goal of women and underrepresented gender minorities, at ThoughtWorks, we are looking at how each region then has additional diversity goals that, again, reflect that regional context. And that is so important. So whether you're talking about caste, class, race, ethnicity, the refugee communities, engaging refugee communities, First Nations, we're trying to really understand how we can use our presence, our community, to really throw the doors open to technology, level the playing field, engage people that wouldn't normally have opportunities in tech. So that's a very important part of our strategy and our culture, and has been for some time. But I'll let Chad talk a little bit more about sort of the origins of this, of sort of how we got to where we are.
Yeah, so ThoughtWorks has been around for 27 years, and although we put formality to certain things over time, we've always had this idea that you could build a company and embrace, the title of this podcast is doing hard things that drive a different type of presence, from managing, different stakeholders across the community, employees, society, et cetera, to actually leaning into a problem and saying, hey, we're good at solving problems. How do we do that more broadly? So Rebecca Parsons, our Chief Technology Officer, talks about how we got to that women and underrepresented gender minority goal. Years ago, we had been looking at our diversity and going, we don't have enough women, and not doing anything about it. And so to really say, okay, what can we do to really fundamentally change how we're recruiting, how we're making our internal environment a place where people want to stay, and putting in that work, and then being honest about where we're failing, measuring, and really working to get better, and not pat ourselves on the back that there's always more to do. And we could take that lens to sustainability. We could take that lens to social change and helping communities and organizations and movements do things with tech. And so we've always sought to do that in various ways. Again, sometimes we were scrappy, sometimes we did it incorrectly. We used to, in the early aughts, run all these hackathons, helping community organizations, and you leave them with tech that doesn't work so well. We talked about that in our social change report from last year, where we've learned to be humble, where we've learned to come alongside and say, hey, we know the tech part, but we don't know your challenges. So there's a whole lot that we've learned over the years, and then tried to make something that was clear and sustainable in our business. And Elise's role is about like us saying, hey, we're going to invest in this. We're going to make sure that we're keeping ourselves honest to do it well.
So, you brought up something interesting where, you are doing a hard thing. And when you identified a few years ago that you didn't have the diversity within your organization that you wanted, specifically with women, and you also recognized that it was a want, but you weren't doing anything about it. What was perceived as hard to do so much that you guys didn't do it, or the company decided that they didn't want to do it because it was hard? What was it, A, that was perceived as difficult? And then B, how did you gather around the idea of actually doing something about it? And who did you need to engage collectively in order to make it happen? What was that like?
I'll go first a little bit, Elise, and then you can layer in. I think a lack of positive, proactive solutions to problems means that you kind of see a problem and you go, that looks hard to solve it. But I think the first step was saying that we could, and obviously belief matters in lots of ways, but saying that we could. Second thing was making our choices, like in recruiting, we will do this, instead of believing, as the industry often does, that there's not enough women in the pipeline, there's not enough underrepresented gender minorities in the pipeline. The pipeline is certainly an issue, but once we said, actually, no, we're going to make sure that we are proactive in, we're hiring these candidates. We're going to proactively look that once we made choices like that, once we have a program called Thoughtworks University, we said, hey, our goal in Thoughtworks University is 60% women. So we did some things like that, which people perceived, that's not possible, but it completely was. And once you make the choice, then it's about, following through on the execution. And as I said before, measuring and keeping yourself honest.
Well, what's interesting is you've really keyed on a point that I really see just in business in general, which is there's a lot of companies that can do things. You identified that you could improve an aspect of your business that you identified was not well represented. And saying what you can do is much, much different than saying what you will do. And so that requires leadership. Somebody had to make the decision to think a little bit bigger. And the reason why people don't think super big is because they're worried about some judgment. What's everybody else going to think? Why do I have to be the one that actually does this? And am I going to be ostracized for thinking this way and then actually saying something about it? That's the think big process. And you have to go past that. You actually literally have to put a foot down and then get leadership or be the leader and the voice that actually puts your foot down and says, this is not right. We need to do something about it. And here's the plan to go execute. Then if you have that leadership, what you end up doing is it comes down into the what we call the frozen middle within the management organization and the employee organization, who are just wondering, what is the message from leadership? Who's going to lead the way so that I can follow? And it unfreezes them. It makes them feel empowered to also do their part to help tackle one big problem. And I love that you guys made the decision to go from what you can do to what you will do. And I think that's really the very first thing that most companies need to do.
Yeah, you talk about leadership. You can look it up online. Rebecca Parsons tells the story much better than I can. But one of the things that she said was we were looking at charts and visualizations. And she said, I don't want to see them anymore if we're not going to do anything. And I think she convicted a lot of people to say, you know what? Yeah, we're going to do it, and drove that.
You know, if I could too, I'd like to just call out Dr. Robert Biko Baker here as a fine example of someone who took really ownership and dove deep into a set of issues and problems that obviously we as a country are faced with at this point in time. Took all those wonderful experiences at ThoughtWorks as a significant contributor to that business, ventured off, and I'm not going to tell the whole story, Dr. Baker, but I mean, it's an amazing journey that you've been on. And after I've had the pleasure of meeting you through a mutual friend, it became really overwhelming for me to see the fine stuff that you were assembling in terms of a solution, a very, very incredible solution directed to underserved communities as a way to activate those communities around important, very important causes and galvanize action. And I think that what you're in the process of doing is absolutely brilliant. And full disclosure, Dr. Baker and I are collaborating on an ability to leverage each other's solutions, ours and another side job that I do, a nonprofit organization, is very much involved in leveraging Dr. Baker's technology as a source of introducing our solution to those communities. So I am super excited to have the pleasure of speaking with you on camera, Dr. Baker. And just if you could do us a favor and just give us a little insight in terms of your journey, where that intersected and threaded with ThoughtWorks, and how that allowed for you to jump off and do some amazing things, like getting a PhD at UCLA and working with Snoop and being very involved in the community. And now it's all being funneled into an IT platform built on AWS, I may add, which is cool.
Definitely built on AWS, and I appreciate that. As you are making me blush a little bit. I don't know if I can blush or I'm sunburnt. I'm feeling a little bit hot and red, but you know,
you're looking good, man.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's a working class town, so all that stuff sounds cool, but my people, they don't care, and I appreciate that too, because it keeps me hungry. But I'm a unique breed. I was always a little bit of a nerd. I'm an organizer. I'm a hip hop dude. And, the cool thing about ThoughtWorks is that they take risks on people that are smart and are scrappy and maybe not fit the complete mold of a technologist. And so, even though I haven't worked for ThoughtWorks in some years, I still talk to Chad, bi-monthly or quarterly and get his input. And whenever I go to Chicago, I'm definitely going to get up with Elise, because I heard she's been doing some cool stuff on the side. I want to learn more about how she was, helping change government. And I just, I don't have a real clear trajectory. I'm gonna use a hip hop term. I'm a hustler, you know, in the most positive of senses. And you know, when I was in high school, I typed my homeboys' papers because they didn't want to type them, you know, and yeah, because I had computers, I did graphs on Applause and Lotus Notes as a real young person, and so pretty much I've always taught myself how to use computers. And when I was at ThoughtWorks, they were, you know, really early advocates of something I had never really heard of, but agile project management. And I really spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to apply that to initially to storytelling and, you know, digital marketing. And, you know, I really went to ThoughtWorks thinking that tech was social media and websites. And I think a lot of their clients did too. And from being exposed to all these geniuses, I really figured out a lane and a language for myself and for people around me. And, you know, over the last 2 or 3 years, we've had clients that have been asking us to think about text messaging and the integration of text messages with email, and then the integration of email into these action platforms. And so my digital market company was doing pretty well. And so we invested in the CRM platform that I think is going to be game changing, especially as there's rules changing with the carrier providers and, you know, 10 DLC. And so I think we're on to something. Hopefully we can have a conversation in a couple months and we'll see how it goes.
So one of the questions I've got, Dr. Baker, is how does your ability to converse in the world of technology, what does that enable you to do to help you drive social change within the hip hop community that you've got? Because I feel as if that, you know, leveraging the skill that you have seen with your experience at ThoughtWorks and giving you the confidence of having those types of conversations to see how technology can actually help, you know, artists actually really make an impact in this new medium of social media. How is it giving you a platform to help promote this as a direction that many of the people that are actually looking at hip hop as an area for them to work in? How is it also helping to maybe build up skills that they could then lend into helping fill this gap that we see within in the cloud business?
Yeah, I mean, I put, and even when we were at ThoughtWorks, we put, you know, technology and ideas and skills in the hands of youth and people that would have never had that, you know.
Right.
We ran a program called the Roy Clay Tech Academy that trained people in JavaScript, you know, and could you imagine being a kid that's never even heard the word Java, and after going through a training, you're learning about Java. And, you know, I was that kid, even while we were doing those training, I was sucking up all the information that was there. And I learned the nomenclature and the language stuff that I sort of knew, but didn't all the way know. And I'll give you a really tangible example. So our platform just looks like we're going to have a real relationship with the Medical College of Wisconsin. They're doing an experiment with the National Institute of Health, and our platform is delivering tens of thousands of messages to the hardest hit zip codes about COVID and vaccinations. And we've converted thousands of people to go get vaccines that wouldn't have ever got vaccines. And of course, it's not the text message or the email that's important, it's the language and the culture that's connected to that. And so I can connect the technologist with the culture, and, you know, we can get into places that maybe the tech couldn't get, or maybe the culture couldn't get. And I think that that's the future. And my goal is to bring other people like me up, because, you know, there's a lot of kids that were good at math but we're told to be good at sports. And, you know, I try to find those youth and tell them that they can do both.
So
Beautiful.
I love this, because it really, what we're doing is we're providing access to information, and we're making it more available to everybody, where, you know, it's not just for people who are actually aware of it. This is making us ubiquitous with every community. And I think that's really what the key is that we're trying to talk about here, because we have seen a tremendous amount of want to change over the last even few months. Let's talk about the last 18 months, where it's been an incredibly enlightening experience for everybody to see maybe the gaps that we were completely oblivious to, because it wasn't something that we were looking at when we weren't in the pandemic, where we were stuck at home and we had to consume information in many different ways. And now we have this access to, my goodness, look at really what is happening in the world and what can we do to address what we're doing in the future. We do have massive gaps of skills in something that a lot of the students in the world right now maybe don't think is cool, or doesn't think that they could do it, or aren't even considering as a career, which is in IT and the ability to code and to leverage the cloud. We are not even really driving that. And you're putting together platforms that are reaching into these communities, and they ought to be able to see that as an opportunity for themselves to, hey, listen, we can do this. We should be able to be thinking bigger about what careers could be. We don't need to be doing what we thought we were going to be doing. And it doesn't need to be not cool. This could be literally a career. And it's not going to stop, in my opinion. And that goes back to the sustainability question that I wanted Elise to actually talk about, which is, what do we need to do in order to keep the focus on this and to keep this being sustainable? What are the things that we are trying to actually articulate that keeps this top of mind, so that we do end up becoming a lot more balanced than we are today?
Well, I think we need to first, to your point, Mike, recognize that as tech becomes more ubiquitous and is really at the center of everything, that we need to sort of evaluate where those inequities lie, whether it's in the digital divide when it comes to access to information, as you talked about, in education, or when it comes to telehealth, for example, where you're in low resource settings and people need to see a doctor. The COVID has really brought, I think, a lot of that more to light, is sort of where that lack of access is. So I really think we need to step back and look at what COVID has laid really bare for us, right? Is that how much technology and the internet plays a role in our daily lives, and where those equity gaps are. But the point you make about tech education and the workforce. I mean, when I joined ThoughtWorks 7 years ago, I come from the nonprofit sector, and one of the reasons I wanted to join ThoughtWorks was because I saw how my sector, the nonprofit sector, was really sort of underprepared, right, for sort of the way society was changing. I was involved in a lot of workforce programs for people who were transitioning out of the criminal justice system, involved in a lot of work in the sustainability and climate space. And we just didn't have the tools. Our program participants didn't have access to the jobs and to the training. And I said, I need to understand how this whole system works, so I can make those connections and I can throw those doors open, so that we can start building bridges, right, between the tech sector and the social sector. And like Biko said, and ThoughtWorks took a chance on me. I'm not I have no technical background, but I know the social sector very well, and I understand what the social sector needs. And I think stepping back, as I said, and really understanding the enormity of the problem and kind of where we need to really come together in coalition to look at how we can scale solutions is going to be where we need to focus our energy in a post-COVID world.
So I think each one of you guys have actually shared a little bit of vulnerability and what it is that you did to start out, and you actually made the leap. You jumped out into the abyss. You did something that required somebody to take a chance on you. at least in your eyes, you thought that that was what they were doing because you didn't have the experience. And I think that is very key. We need to do a good job of encouraging others to take a chance, to not be afraid of rejection, to believe. First off, they've got to believe that they have what it takes to do these kinds of things, and that the worst thing that they can think is happening will probably never happen. And they shouldn't stop before they even get told no or they run into their first rejection. And we also need to teach them that rejection is just one person saying no at that time, that you don't quit. And so I'm curious to know what it is that you can do, all three of you can do, to empower and teach others to do what you did. What motivated you to do it? And how do we simplify that message to just tell others, do it? Because it's an opportunity that you are preventing yourself from taking advantage of if you stop. You can't quit. You just need to go do it, and do it until you get what you want. Is it that they don't know what they want? I'm curious.
I think those of us with access, with understanding, with uh, it takes I mentioned us learning how to be humble. It takes a first saying like, actually, we don't know answers to things, and people in communities who are trying to solve their own problems have answers. So if we can empower them to use technology to solve problems, then we're doing something amazing. And then there's value, not just in thinking that we know things, but they know things. And so then once you take that next step, like Vico was saying, I'm working with folks in working class neighborhoods in Milwaukee. It's their priorities and not ours that should really drive how they adopt, consume, create, and use technology. So then once you can rally around that and you understand that personally, that that's what you're trying to do, I think it makes a lot of it easier. And then your message isn't come to a tech training program. Your message is, hey, did you want to use tech to solve X? There are ways to do that. We've got tools for you. Come join and rock with us. And I think that's a powerful way to not be in the sort of dichotomy that we are now. It's really about, partnering, coming alongside people and saying, I got some knowledge. Here's what I got. You have knowledge. What can we do together?
Do 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 people feel like they're doing these things on their own, in a silo, with no support? I feel like a lot of big decisions feel like they're being made in the dark and all alone. And I I encourage people who are in mentor type roles, leadership type roles, to remind everybody, you've got a whole team of people. You've got a whole organization that can support you. You're not here to solve every problem. You're not even here to solve one problem. You're here to be a part of a team that solves one problem. And when they feel like they've got a connection with other people who are all going in the same direction, they feel you get more empowerment. At least that's how I feel. And it helps me tackle some very big problems, because there's always those days where you got a big problem that you're trying to solve, and you can go into that dark place and literally feel like a failure because you haven't solved it. And yet you've never asked the person to the right or to the left, who just simply needs to look at it from a different angle, to point out a solution that you may never have seen before. And I think what we're doing is we're recognizing that there are different perspectives out there in the world that are actually can present themselves in the macrocosm of our actual community of customers. How is it possible that we can solve their problems if we're only looking at it from a particular viewpoint? We need to have a diverse set of viewpoints within the company that's looking to solve those other companies or communities' problems. And we just need to understand what those issues are. And it helps when you've got diverse perspectives and experiences building solutions to address those. Is that what it is that you're trying to do at ThoughtWorks, is to increase that diverse view that you have within the employees to help you build a better business? And the same with you, Dr. Baker. Do you have that diverse outlook in some of the tools that you're building to help reach those communities that are underserved?
Well, I can't speak to what's going on at ThoughtWorks now, although I think it's cool that a lot of ThoughtWorkers consider themselves ThoughtWorks alum. I see that on people's pages. So there's a lot of pride that goes into that. But there was this, again, Agile was like an eye-opener for me because it allowed me to put a language to some of the stuff that I had been doing as an organizer, but hadn't all the way applied with any practice or scientifically. But there's this term called cross-functional teams. And a cross-functional team is a team that can bring many different skill sets to the table to solve a problem. And, I don't know if you're thinking about running a business in the 21st century and you're not thinking about cross-functional teams that includes women or women of color or people of color, you're really going to be failing your stakeholders or shareholders, because people of color are going to be the new general audience or the new general market in the future. And so, I think it's smart for, just for the social good to bring people of color and women on staff, but it's really good for business. And as something that's a new team, building new teams, I definitely think about diversity, and I don't want to just build a team full of people of color. And that I think smart teams are those that have diverse opinions and ideologies, and I want to do that the best that I can.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, I think having diverse teams just build better products, and also can raise up issues before you get to production that are extremely problematic. So you bring people in with those diverse viewpoints, and you create a space where people feel empowered and have agency to raise up concerns, to talk about risks. And that is also, I think, a really, from my perspective, a unique part of ThoughtWorks culture, where not only do we create an environment where those diverse perspectives are not only just welcomed, but really encouraged. We really promote a culture of cooperation. And I think, getting back to your point, Mike, when you're trying to solve hard problems, cooperation is like the fundamental right tool that you need to get through that. And I think, we don't have a sort of traditional hierarchy at ThoughtWorks, and our teams come together for different projects, and we have strong cultural values around what it means to cooperate, no matter what sort of situation or team environment you're in or what project you're on. And I think that really helps us take risks comfortably, because we know we have each other's backs. There's not a sort of a culture of competition, and that it's a safe space to experiment. And I think when, as Biko's talked about being agile, I think having an environment where you feel like you can experiment, you can fail fast, you can be agile. It really does require like a sense of, I know my teammates are going to be here to cooperate with me and to lift me up. Sense of, absolutely, a sense of belonging, and being part of the group, and that there's not it feels like the personal risk is a lot less.
Yeah, you're not worried about that judgment. It's more of a, we're here together, and we have to really believe that you want us to be experimenting, and not all experiments are winners, right? So what do you do when you find that the experiment has failed? just go and find something else. You have to believe that, and you can only believe that if you're part of a good, close-knit, community, or you feel like you're part of, I guess the best word would be some sort of a family, and you approach it that way. Totally agree.
So I just want to be mindful of our time here together as we wrap this up. I think everything that you have just described surrounding all of these critically important initiatives are amazingly important, not only for ThoughtWorks and Rocks Online, obviously, our entire society, our entire business community, everybody benefits from this. Speaking of which, I'd love to hear, because obviously your customers are aware of the strategies that you're taking. How are they responding?
Oh, I think we're in a moment where things like climate change and sustainability from that perspective, or ethical tech. We had a whole webinar series and written a series of things about ethical tech, and some of the things that Elise just noted around diverse perspectives. That is not only prevalent, but is accelerating in terms of companies thinking about, how do I do better? And how do I think about this in the context of maybe an ESG initiative that I have, or we haven't been doing well enough on certain aspects, and we know we can get better. So I think in the technology space, we're seeing a lot of companies, try to figure this out. And I think in terms of the benefit to a lot of our clients, it's funny, both Elise and Vico talked about agile and cooperation. I think some of the places that don't get modern digital ways of working correct haven't corrected their culture, so that people can show up and say, I'm myself today, and that you accept me and I accept you, and that when we're working together to deliver XYZ, we've got that common baseline. And I think our attempts to build a different kind of company from the beginning enabled an environment where those kind of ideas could flourish, and then that becomes self-reinforcing. And I think if you have we've all read the threads on Twitter about Agile doesn't work, or these digital things don't work, continuous delivery, DevOps, DevSecOps, all these things don't work. I would encourage you, if you believe that, to examine how you behave in your corporate context, to say, do we really value other people, and is it in a way where people can show up? And I think when you see that just in your work, then you're more likely to make those kind of cultural changes stick.
I love that message. What I got out of that is that you are building a culture of what's possible. And, it is a hard thing to look beyond what you have always thought was impossible, a project that you were trying to do, and everybody's like, it's never been done before. And that's the point, right? Maybe this stuff has never been done before, but it's not impossible. We are going to make it possible, and we are not going to do it alone. It's going to take a team, and we're building that team. And I absolutely love that message. I think it is actually what is going to accelerate the adoption of technology over the next 10 years. We are really at the beginning of adopting this, and we need all hands on deck to help us achieve these growth objectives that we expect are going to actually be required in order to satisfy the needs of every single person on this planet. And we're building it right as we speak. And I couldn't be more excited, especially working with partners such as yourselves and reaching out to organizations that are leveraging those tools, like what Dr. Biko Baker is doing, to reach all those underserved communities that haven't had access to this kind of technology before. So I cannot wait to see what it looks like in the next 10 years, to see the changes between today and then. Chip, I really appreciate you putting this together. Thank you.
Oh, what an honor to have an hour with you all. This was fantastic. Thank you. Hey, will you come back?
Yes.
We have an encore performance.
Please.
Absolutely.
Good, good. Well, thank you again. Appreciate it. And we will certainly talk to you folks very soon.
Thank
Do
you.
hard things,
Take care.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye all.